All right, so hi everyone. Firstly, thank you for everyone for attending Pakistan Dreaming and taking the time to attend my session today as well. I'll be running a session today which is focused on what you need to do to ultimately achieve Salesforce's top credential, which is the Certified Technical Architect, which they have. So, as a quick introduction to myself, my name is Mitesh Mistry. I'm a Salesforce CTA. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem now for about 14, 15 years. I've worked across a number of different consulting firms and providers. I've done projects of different scales and sizes throughout my time. And I've kind of grown my career from starting off as a developer and moving on to be more of an enterprise architect, which is the role which I play today. I'm the CTO here at VRP Consulting. We're a consulting partner who operates across the world. And some of you guys will probably be aware, I run my own CTA coaching academy called Technocraft Cloud Services. I'm one of the key coaches there who run that program as well. So today I want to firstly say thanks to the sponsors, Salesforce, the Trailblazer community, PDF Butler, and others as well who made this event possible for Pakistan Dreaming. It's nice to be able to contribute to developments in Asia and see the ecosystem as a whole across the ASEAN region come up and grow and prosper as well as a community. So I'm really pleased to be helped to be part of that one. I'm here. So the five areas I want to touch upon today is what are the kind of key areas that a CTA needs to have experience do to be able to get there. So the first one is experience. The second one is your kind of personality and approach. The third one is how you approach solving a problem. The fourth one is top tips which I'm going to give you. And then lastly, I'll speak about what is in it for you, and why should you go about trying to achieve the CTA credential. So let's start off with talking about experiences. So what experiences would actually help you on your journey to CTA? So I typically split it up into five different areas. The first one is Salesforce development. So when you're starting your Salesforce journey, I think it's very useful to have had some form of hands-on experience in the platform. So building standard things in Salesforce, so using the standard like flows, um, configuration, doing those areas, but also doing some coding areas as well. So you begin to understand what's the trade-off between where standard capabilities end and where um, programmatic capability starts in the Salesforce platform. It's always useful to be part of DevOps processes and pipelines. You understand how metadata is structured behind the scenes for Salesforce and how an environment structure needs to work. That's a good experience to get. Ensuring that any work that you take on, you're adopting best practices when building out different Salesforce use cases. The next one I would say is decision making. So before you do any piece of development, taking the time to think about what the different options might be and how best to do something. Even for things like declarative features which you're building, thinking about the technical design for that, and also contributing documentation. So for a lot of you guys who may be developers who are doing that kind of role today, think about these things because this will help you transition from a developer to an architect and help you go on that journey towards CTA. The next one is solution design and architecture. So similar to my point to before is you need to be start becoming a decision maker for key features that you're going to use. So if you have a requirement, instead of the Jira ticket telling you what you should do, you should start to think about, fine, if this is in my court, what would I try and do to solve this problem? I think helping this, when you start to write solution design documents, it starts to make this process easier and cleaner. You start to understand um, how to actually design things. Being part of end-to-end solution design, so not just thinking about Salesforce, but if Salesforce is tying into other systems, making sure that you're building a solution that can work end-to-end. Performing estimations, I feel that's a good exercise when you start to think about estimates to understand what are the different pieces of a solution and how long it'll take to build them. A good skill to learn is presenting solution designs to internal audiences and also to customers. So a lot of times you find when you're early on in your career, you may not get a chance to do external presentations, but one important thing I say is on any projects you're working on, if you get a chance to do show and tells, get a chance to be in front of somebody and present, then absolutely do it because that builds up your confidence and skills in explaining concepts to non-technical people as well. And then lastly, something which is often forgotten is when we're thinking about solutions, we should also think about the sharing implications for those as well. And what are the security impact? And this is really key because you want to make sure that you're designing solutions that are actually secure and you're not exposing data to people they should not be exposed to. The next one is enterprise architecture. So how does Salesforce fit into a wider solution? So not just thinking about Salesforce here, thinking about how does it tie into other systems in your landscape. If you're designing a solution which consists of multiple clouds, so let's say you have Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, but you may have Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud, Trying to get involved in projects where that's essential will help you understand how these systems piece together. Being in a position to make product recommendations, so you start to think about, fine, I'll recommend X, Y, and Z Salesforce capability, app exchange product, or Salesforce product to the customer. Um, Being able to understand the different Salesforce licenses and knowing when to recommend them. Understanding how a system might need to scale for the future. So, for example, how will it cope with certain data volumes in the future? How will it cope with certain user volumes in the future? These are things to think about on day one when you're designing a solution. Um, Thinking beyond just Salesforce. So understanding at what point Salesforce might not work for something and where another solution like AWS or something custom built on Heroku might be required to fulfill a certain problem. And then lastly, being in a position where you can help shape programs of work. I think these are good skills to have, which are more enterprise architecture focused, but are something which a CTA would actually need to try and learn. The next two pieces are around sort of the non-technical areas. So project management. Take the time to be part of work estimations. So don't just leave it to somebody else. If you're asked to estimate a piece of work, then be part of that. Try and understand in which logical sequence certain areas of work should be done. So should your integration be built first? Should your core solution be built first? What should you be working on first? So be able to try and shape up programs of work. Get to a position where you can manage a team of developers and administrators, so you get to understand how to resolve problems for them as well. Project governance. So you need to think about, for some of the medium or larger size projects, what kind of governance structures you need to put in place for those to work. So what kind of teams and review points and checkpoints you should put in place to make sure that a high quality solution is always being delivered. Also ensuring that whatever we are building, both development and architecture best practices are being adopted. So here you want to make sure that if there's the right way of doing something, that if you're responsible for a team and even for yourself, you're ensuring those right standards and principles are being applied in the work which you do. And then lastly is, how do you deal with customers? So you should be able to explain technical concepts to non-technical people. So often we find ourselves as people who come through more technical routes. We can explain the technical thing really well, but if the audience is non-technical, you need to not lose them and make sure they can understand how something works as well. So that's kind of a skill, I would say, to be able to explain things in a meaningful way. Um, Take part in discovery sessions and workshops. So instead of just coming in at the development phase, try be involved in the discovery phase. So you can then learn the skills about what kind of questions to ask to understand the client problem. Lead the design playback session. So if you design something, don't let somebody else take the credit for that. You stand up and you lead the design playback if you've done it. Lead pre-sales sessions. I think being part of pre-sales is a good skill because you get to understand a client problem and how you think about solving it at a high level, and then take the time to get exposure in creating presentations too. So you'll probably notice here I've touched upon a couple of hard skills. I've touched upon a couple of soft skills as well, because ultimately the CTA it's a combination of both technical knowledge and the ability to manage, handle client situation, and effectively communicate your architecture and vision for a program of work. So these are the skills which you need to have to become a CT. And the reason I call out these things here is because I feel these are things which you can gain on the projects that you work on and the roles which you either have now or might want to take on in the future. So it's quite important that you look to develop these skills as you move forward. Cool. So next area is personality. What do you need to become a CTA? So these are kind of points which I personally feel that somebody who wants to go down this journey needs to have. So the first one is a real ruthlessness and determination. So speaking from personal experience, you're required to commit between 20 to 25 hours per week of study for at least a year or probably more, a year and a half, to be able to get through and achieve the CTA credential. So you have to be very focused, very determined to get it done. And you'll notice that the people who are very serious about becoming a CCA, there's a real mad passion about them, which gets them through. And they literally make it the most important thing which they are doing to get through. Second one, I'm going to go left, right, left, right. So the second one is good presenter. You should be good at presenting, be able to present solutions really well. You should be a goal getter. So you should be somebody who's, once he sets a goal for himself, you're able to proceed and achieve it. You need to have attention to detail. So when you're reading case studies which come up in the review board, you need to make sure that you are reading the fine lines and solutioning and solving for the fine lines as well. You cannot afford to miss a detail. So being able to pay attention to small details is really important. Similar points above, you need to be very passionate about achieving the outcome. So you need to, that has to be your primary goal. I want to make sure I get this. Procedural in your thinking. So be able to think of a process and follow it as part of solving a particular scenario. Humility and humbleness, I feel, is very important in any workplace in Salesforce. I think it's very important that you remain humble, accept what you don't know, and take the time to overcome your weaknesses. And I think humility is a very good skill to have to allow that. And the last one is good muscle memory. So by going on repeat and learning something 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times, it makes sure that the same knowledge remains top of your head when you need to have it there for the review board. So building a muscle memory is a very good strength to have for review boards too. Okay, so approach-wise, what should I do to become Salesforce CTA? So here's the kind of basic route that most of us have followed and that we should look to take. So um, the starting point is the Salesforce Architect Trail Mix, which contains all of the domain trail mixes that Salesforce have created to learn the content. You should also then complete the external domain certifications, which is the Application Architect, System Architect, and the ones underneath that. The most important point in this slide is point three. So when you're studying for your credentials, which are there in the Salesforce pyramid, it's extremely important that you create revision notes, because when it comes to getting close to the review board and you need to make sure information and knowledge is top of your head, you don't want to be opening Trailhead again and again. You want to have your own short form notes you can revise from. So this is an extremely important step. But if you're doing this study, step three, absolutely do right. So the next one is join the Architect of HANA community. So Melissa Shepherd, obviously, you guys maybe are aware, has created a very nice group where a lot of the people studying for CCA are members of that group. Very good community. I'd be part of that and try and form a study group amongst people who may be in the same time zone or in the same part of the journey as yourselves, to kind of encourage and help each other too. Get project experiences for new domains, so things which you have not done before. So let's say you maybe haven't done DevOps before, you maybe haven't done communities before. Try and get on a project which lets you do that. So at least you're learning these things hands-on, in actual real experience as well. For the bits you don't know, where you may not get project experience, so for example, integration, single sign-on, do hands-on examples. So building a Salesforce org to Salesforce org integration, or for example, building a single sign-on from Salesforce or Salesforce org. Those are the kind of things which will actually teach you how those concepts work. So do lots of hands-on training so you understand how these things actually come to life and work. For those who want more professional coaching, I run CTA Coaching Academy for called Technocraft Cloud Services. You can kind of go on LinkedIn to find out more about what I do. But if it's something which is of interest to you, then it's something which you can look at, professional coaching. As part of any program, whether it's with me or generally, you will want to do a lot of mock exams, preferably some with a coach and the majority with yourself as well. And I think nowadays there's a lot of mock exams available that you can look to solve. Number nine is another important point, which goes very well with three. So when you're studying and learning stuff, naturally some questions are going to come up. So don't leave these unanswered. Get those questions answered, get your doubts cleared, and make sure you understand how things are working. Because if you have a little niggle or a little doubt left somewhere, I can almost guarantee that the judges in the board will they'll smell that and they'll exactly prod in that area. So do not go in with even a 1% doubt or something. Clear everything up and make sure you know everything really well. When you start to learn new stuff, apply it on projects. So one of the best ways to learn concepts is actually application and applying it on live projects. So apply the things you learn on projects. And the last one is my point about humility. So accept that you don't know everything to the nth degree, but take the time to close off the gaps that you have in your knowledge. And that's really key to getting towards CCA. So it kind of splits into three areas, okay? The first one is basically domain learning, where you want to focus on learning the 10 different domains that Salesforce have. I would say you should look to create one set of revision notes per domain. So it's like a focused learning, which you can do. The notes which you create should be both text and screenshots, so you can start to piece together how something works. For me, in my time, some of my notes were 100 pages long, for some domains. So that kind of tells you a little bit of detail that you need to kind of cover off. For some things that you want to create, like mind maps or cheat sheets for, do that. It helps with revision and learning. Form your own decision-making guides. So I've seen a lot of people now starting to say that, fine, what kind of things would make you use Flow? What kind of things would make you use Apex? What kind of things should be a trigger? Start to do those things, because that's what you're going to have to apply when you do the review board eventually. Areas where you've got a bit lower experience, try to do hands-on examples. So you're learning things like properly, and how they work. And then update your notes based on Salesforce's new releases. So Salesforce releases new capabilities, new features. Update your notes too to make sure that they're up to date with whatever's generally available from Salesforce. Stage two, I would say, is project experiences. So things which you've not done before, try and get to do on a project. So things like single sign-on, integration, communities. Try and see if you can get project experience in those areas. Look to be in a role which helps you define enterprise architecture for multi-cloud projects. So this is where you are in some kind of project where you're thinking about Salesforce plus, let's say, Commerce Cloud plus Marketing Cloud. So you can start to design how does the end-to-end work across more than just one system. I think that is something really key to help you understand how a cross-system architecture should piece together. When you're designing things, think about longer term things like performance when you have data volume and load, and also scalability. So how does our solution scale for the future? Anything which you start to design from now on, make it future proof. So don't think about today, but think about 5 years time when we have X number of users, X amount of data volume. Maybe lookups do start to come in. How will you handle it? So think about those things from the onset, and then start to make a transition from more of a developer to design and architecture roles, which will then help you in your CTA journey. And the last piece of feedback here is then around exam preparation. So do as many mock exams as you can. Most of them, I think, are going to be in your own time, and that's fine. But spend that time presenting, recording, and then listening back to see like how well you did. Form your own presentation approach. So you need to define what is the way you're going to present, what slides you're going to have, what are you going to present on each slide. Something which you need to put in place. If you get a chance to join an academy, that's great. But otherwise, see if you can present to an actual CTA judge and get real feedback. One key point, and I mentioned this to everyone, is focus on data model and sharing. So the heart and soul of the exam, as much as these other areas matter, like integration, security, etc., the data model and sharing has to be spot on because that's ultimately what they're assessing you on at the core of your solution. So focus on learning that skill really well and make sure you're able to do data modeling and sharing correctly. Solve mocks multiple times and try different approaches. So both solution approaches, presentation approaches. Try solving a mock many times in different ways. So you understand what works, what doesn't work. Practice speed. You only have 45 minutes to present, so you need to make sure you're quick at presenting while still making sure people can understand what you're saying. You need to also be faster at solving a case study. So you only have 3 hours. These case studies are about 11, 12 pages long. You have to be fast. So be able to solve fast, but also solve it right as well. I think one key thing I would also say is get somebody else to confirm that they feel you're ready to go for a board. So at least you know that you're good to go. Continue to be revising the notes that you've made. And then, as I mentioned earlier, around 20, 25 hours study per week is something which you have to be doing when you're going forward for CTA. So it's like a university degree. You pretty much have to treat it like a full time. This is what I'm doing. And that kind of time commitment you have to give if you want to go forward for board. So for future CTA people, what are my top tips and recommendations? So firstly, I would say is open your mind to knowledge. Just accept there are some things you won't know, and that way let knowledge come your way. Study in depth. Don't be like this part is probably not important. Don't need to study it now. Go to the depth. Make sure you learn the things which are there. Give yourself the time per week to be able to do study. When you're approaching the review board, try to find easier projects to take on, which are less mentally demanding. And that makes a huge difference because it will give you time throughout the working hours where you can study. It'll also mean that your head is not fried from day-to-day client work. So absolutely try and get onto easier projects around that time. Nothing beats real experience. So anything which you can do on projects to learn content will be extremely important. Practical practice, I would say, is extremely important here, where you start to try and build things in your own orgs, or try and build integrations from Salesforce, or try and build single sign-on. It's a really good thing to do, so you understand how some of these things work, which you may not experience. As I mentioned, muscle memory, revise, 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 continue to revise and repeat. Join study groups, find a CTA mentor, join a coaching academy if you have the ability to do so. And then as you start to learn things, try to behave like the CTA that you've either seen or want to behave like. So you can really start to embody the knowledge which you've gained and start to apply it on work that you do. In terms of the board itself, give a good presentation. I think if you spend the first 45 minutes giving a really killer presentation, it gives the judges a lot of confidence that you know what you're talking about. And that comes a lot from actually knowing the depth of knowledge that a CTA needs to know. If you genuinely in your heart feel that you've done this all the study you could have done, you've really gained a solid grounding on the Salesforce fundamentals that you need to know, you will exude that confidence when you present to the judges, just by the things you say and the nuggets of wisdom which you cover with certain points. It shows when someone really knows what they're talking about. When it comes to Q&A, because there's 45 minutes presentation, 45 minutes Q&A, know where to stand your ground, where you think you might be right. But if you're trying to be, I guess, not pushed, but coaxed towards a certain area, be willing to budge as well, where the judges might be trying to push you towards a solution that might be slightly better. And whatever choice you make, whether you stay with your option, you move with another option, be able to justify why you made that choice too. And that why is very important. The judges don't just want to know your solution is A. They want to know how did you reach A? What was your reasoning for reaching A? That's really key. And then now, because all of the boards going forward are going to be virtual, Lucid chart is very, very important to know. So know how to use Lucid charts very well. And the shapes, Salesforce shapes library, and just Lucid chart shapes in general too. Be very comfortable using these so you can build artifacts really quickly on the platform. And my last point, which I want to end upon, is why. So what's in it for me? Why should I become a CTA? Well, these are my kind of top tips here. Firstly, you can serve your customers better because you have top knowledge of the platform. You'll be recognized externally and within your companies as an industry leader who's got sound knowledge of the platform and its capabilities. I think it, like for myself, it opens the doors to a lot of international opportunities. So I think if I didn't have this credential, I perhaps may not have got some of the things which I've been able to do. So I would say that's something which is a really good driver for becoming CTA. It gives you a chance to train and develop others in your country, in your communities, in your ecosystem as a whole. There's definitely a monetary uplift which you will get after becoming CTA, and make sure that if you do spend so long studying for something for this amount of time, that you are getting the financial gains as well, and also helps you grow in confidence. And this last one is key. So that confidence is a big factor in helping you do your day-to-day job better, and it's really key that the CTA gives you that confidence to do your Salesforce work really well. Cool. So I'm gonna end there. I just want to say firstly, thank you everyone for listening to me hearing my presentation. Are there any questions which you guys have which you'd like me to answer? So I'm not sure if people can talk, but if you want to type it in the chat.
Definitely, Mitesh, it was very informative. Just want to open the stage for any Q&A. Any questions from Mitesh? Anyone?
I think we're good.
Yeah. Mitesh, I think we are good. No more questions from the audience. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful session, and hope everyone from here learned something and taking something from you.
Cool. No worries. Well, thank you for letting me present, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Mitesh. Bye.
Well, thank you. Bye.
Bye.